For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
All right, everybody, we're back. It's Friday. It's our last time with Rev Hughs, RUF campus minister at Colorado State University. I've enjoyed talking with you, Ryan. It's been helpful for me. I hope it has for others as well. Last question we have for you, a question that we ask often, and it really stems from the fact that we should strive to be lifelong students. And so in light of that, reading books. It's important for us to be reading. I mean, as Christians, special revelation, God speaking, creating through words. We can't overemphasize the importance of words. So all of that to say, what are some books you're reading right now that have been encouraging or impacting to you, as well as some books that have been life-changing, and this is outside of the Word of God. We talked about that yesterday.
Good. Yeah, just first of all, thanks for having me. This has been super fun.
Good, man. That's good to hear.
And I hope the Lord can use this to help, whatever I have to say to help somebody and help us help each other together. And
absolutely.
It's been fun. Thanks. Yeah, in terms of what I'm reading now or read recently, I think some of the things that Scott Sauls has put out there, like Befriend and Jesus Outside the Lines, have been so theologically and scripturally deep and beautiful, but yet so practical on some of the current things we're just dealing with in the church. And I just have super appreciated his. It's kind of like, we're going to deal with the scary stuff, honestly, and then see what. Surely the gospel has to have something to say with those difficult relationships with the difficult topics, the hot topics.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Befriend alone. Is there an area he did not
I know.
Go after? It's like he covered so much ground in that book.
It's overwhelming. I actually had to read that book just by I'm kind of interested in this one this week. It's kind of like the Proverbs where it's
exactly.
But super helpful in that way. I've actually been reading a lot. Our other podcasts about kind of soul care and the burning out. Things, the books we mentioned last time, Resilient Ministry. And I'm trying to, by the Lilly Foundation, some of those authors, people are pouring so much money and time into trying to help us pastors survive. So I'm reading a lot of those books currently. I think some of it too, I've now been in the ministry kind of for long enough that that's becoming an issue. And I can see, if I'm not growing, taking care of, I will burn out. I can see it. I can see it happening next week, honestly, if I'm not careful. So I've been intentional to read those kind of things. I've also been doing just a little bit of kind of re-envisioning a ministry and my values and what I care about. And by that I mean actually doing those awful personality profile things and work profiles. It's try and figure out now in my late 30s, here's the reality. I am who I am, and I better deal with that. So I've been asking for help in just kind of coming to grips with who I am, how I do ministry, and how I can just be who I am and do ministry out of my core strengths and maybe even not burn out because I'm not doing things that are outside of, I'm not trying to be somebody else in ministry or be one of my idols. And of course, I had to mention it, Eugene Peterson, I think above all, in terms of just a life of a pastor, Eugene Peterson has saved my bacon. In ministry. I have read, Contemplative Pastor and Under the Unpredictable Plan, I don't know, several times. And his other things.
Which one would kind of be, if you had to say one of his? I mean, that could be kind of hard, but is there one that you kind of find yourself going back to, or at least some truths from it that you just continue to reflect upon?
Well, I just reread, again, Under the Unpredictable Plan. So I would say that one, because I just reread it. And then I, underlined everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think his thing about knowing, particularly in that, but knowing God in the mundane and in the moment, being aware of what's going on around you, not trying to be the mega church pastor, the fancy, God, I mean, that book is written a long time ago, and like, there's even more of that with like live streaming of everything, right? And so going on now, and man, what a temptation! And just to try and be that guy, and Eugene Peters is like, please don't be that guy. Be a pastor, and walk with people. Be a shepherd. And notice where God's at work in the moment, in the mundane, because we're all looking for this glory. We want to be glorified. We want our names to be remembered, and we don't want to deal with the hard people. We don't want the awkward situations. We don't want ministry to be exhausting. Eugene Peters is like, sorry, that's where God's at work in them, and has at work where He's at work in you. So quit complaining to Him about the heat and the heart, And so anyway, that's been encouraging to me. But
that's good.
Next year, I would say the contemplative pastor when I reread that again next year. So.
Yeah, that's good to hear that. His name continues to come out. I know.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, just over the past, I don't know, it seems like 5 years or so, I continue to hear his name. And he was kind of mocked initially when, the message was written. And he was just kind of a caricature, I guess. And now it's just, you hear so many pastors reference his other works and how helpful they've been. So that's good. Any others that are older that have kind of been life-changing to you? Not necessarily in ministry, prior to ministry. Any others you want to add to that?
Oh man, the truth. I didn't read much before in the ministry. I really didn't.
Not me either. Yeah.
A few devotionals, and I tried to read some of that Puritan stuff because that was like really cool when I was in high school, and I picked up that stuff. Yeah, well, in my church, I don't know.
Puritan paperbacks, is that kind of?
Well, no, like the original stuff,
Oh, wow.
And I can't say early on. The reason is because one of my pastors, when I was in high school, an awesome guy, Chris Lungard, who has written a few
the
like
Enemy Within.
Glass and Enemy Within.
Oh yeah,
The Enemy Within was an early formative thing. His is based on
John Owen's Mortification of Sin.
Mortification of Sin. I tried to read that John Owen, but gibberish nonsense to me. Like I couldn't do it. But Chris Lungard's book, I have read that several times too.
That's an excellent book.
That came out in high school, and he was my pastor. We read that. I remember just the light came aha moments in high school and college from that book. So I really appreciate his distilling down those really old dead people that I just can't read because I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's one that comes up, and of course, honestly, I have to say too that this is also sort of, it sounds cliche, but Keller's books, Tim Keller. Oh my goodness, he is just so helpful because particularly in my cultural context, we are post-Christian. Like we're like New York, maybe, or that kind of thing. Like all of my students really are in that space that he's talking about in Reason for God, and they need to hear the gospel the way the prodigal God talks about. We need to talk about idols the way he does in counterfeit gods. Like he just speaks to my context like exactly where they're at. And that's been so helpful because nobody else is writing that way. I mean, except for Scott Sauls now and some other people. But anyway.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's a reason it sounds cliched. I mean,
that keeps coming up.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, well,
so,
no, I mean,
yeah.
but there's a reason why people keep referencing him. I mean, the Lord's given him an immense gift to communicate through the written word and preaching. He's pretty good at that too, I guess.
He's okay.
So yeah, well, Ryan, this has been really helpful again. Thanks for taking the time out and being on the podcast.
Absolutely, it was fun. Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning in this week to the Local Youth Worker. As always, we hope you've been encouraged and equipped in your call as youth workers. If you take time to rate this podcast on iTunes, that would greatly help us. As always, we want to thank Joe Deegan for providing the music and encourage you to go out and purchase his newest CD, Cover and Title Page, which you can find at iTunes. See you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
Oh, come and buy without money. Oh, come and feast without pay. For the King has opened his banquet hall to the beggar